What if I told you this one thing could make your music sound 10 times better immediately? Well, it's true. And no, it's not some overpriced plugin or some magic button that only pros know about. It's something you can start doing right now. And frankly, if you're not doing it, you're missing out on some amazing sounding music. Stick around because by the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to take your tracks to the next level today with just one strategy. Let's hop in. This strategy is probably one you've heard of before when you began your music production journey. It's not new and it's not earth-shatteringly game-changing, but if you actually do it, your music will skyrocket. The technique is use reference tracks. But hold up, you've probably used reference tracks before, but you've probably never used them the way I'm about to show you. I'm taking the strategy of reference tracks to the extreme. First, I'll explain why most people use reference tracks wrong. Then, I'll explain how they should be used to up your productions. And finally, I'll walk you through crafting a beat from start to finish using the technique I lay out. This is the #1 strategy I would choose to learn if I was restarting music production from scratch. And if you follow along, you'll have a professional sounding beat to go with it. So how do most people use reference tracks? And why are they using them incorrectly? Well, first of all, if you've been following so far and don't know what reference tracks are, you're just not sure what I'm talking about, they're when you use professional quality productions to guide your mixing decisions on a track. For most people, that means that they'll drag and drop a professionally produced song into their DAW and compare it with their song so that they can compare mixing decisions, see what the differences are, and go from there. Use them as a guide. It's a fantastic idea and it will absolutely result in better productions, but most people don't use them right. Most producers will start a session, record some ideas down, and then drag and drop a track that they like that sounds similar to their session so they can stack it up and see what they have in common and see what they need to change. That's a great starting point, but that's not going to cut it. There's a few things wrong with this strategy. #1, if you're just beginning with music production, the professional track is going to sound so much better than your own, you're going to have no idea where to start. #2, the mastered professional track will sound louder than your unmastered demo. And anything that's louder sounds better to our ears, which means we won't accurately be able to measure the differences of one track to the other because of that loudness discrepancy. #3, if you've already started a song and then put a reference track on afterwards, you're missing out on one of the most important things references can help with, which is sound selection and song arrangement. #4, your sounds aren't going to be exactly the same as the reference track, which means they probably need some different treatment and mixing than what you're hearing. This isn't to say that all reference tracks are bad. If you're a professional producer and you know what you're doing, then by God, use reference tracks to compare. But if you're a beginner or even intermediate at music production, you're much better off using reference tracks in the way I'm about to show you. Instead of using reference tracks like most people, like I just described, we're going to construct our entire song using the reference track as a guide from the beginning. We'll listen for each element of the mix and steal it for our own use. We'll try copying the kick sound, the snare sound, the guitar they chose, and how they mix it. We'll build our entire track this way, only changing a few items. Picasso once said that good artists copy, but great artists steal. I know what you're thinking. Steal? You want me to steal from other artists? Yeah, kind of. In stealing those sounds, chances are we won't replicate them perfectly. And the more we work on the track, the more our own individual artist's fingerprint will start to poke its head through. The track will become less of the original track and more of amalgamation of ours combined with the professional track. And then if we have an end result that does sound too much like the original, we can always scrap it and start over. But you're going to learn way more by copying the professional track than you will by poking around on your own and using reference tracks like most people do. That's the basic idea, but it's going to make a lot more sense if I show you how to do it in your DAW. So let's hop into the computer. So I'm working on a song for a client and they wanted something in the style of Shawn Mendes. I listened to a few of his tracks and I found one that I really vibe with. Normally I would just drag and drop the track that I vibed with and that I liked that I thought would be a good fit into my DAW and begin working. But because I am extremely scared of the YouTube copyright gods and getting flagged for this video, I found a song that's not Shawn Mendes, but it's in a similar genre. It's almost as if Shawn Mendes and an EDM monster had a baby. We'll call this new artist Fawn Fendez. I prefer doing this with already successful songs with a proven track record and lots of listens, but for teaching this method, this will work just fine. Let's bring in this track by Fon Fendez and get to work. First thing I like to do when bringing in a reference track like this is to split it up using a stem separator. Nowadays, most DAWs have one easily available, and this is going to let us hear each individual element by itself. I'll separate the stems and see what I get. Now that I have each individual element isolated, I can more easily copy them. I'll start this reference track by isolating the drums, soloing them by themselves, and trying to find a similar kick sound. I'm listening for the boominess, for the reverb, the attack, anything I can do to match this kick sound, I'm gonna use to my advantage. Once I have the sound in my head, I'll go through my sample libraries and try to find something similar. This might be Splice, it might be XO, it might just be scrolling through Logic's stock options. Whatever you can do will totally be fine, and you can always go back and change this later. Here's the kick that I found to match it. And here's what this one sounds like. We'll do the same thing for the hi-hats and snares, or in this case, I'm hearing more claps. And here's kind of what I've came up with. I made a similar pattern to kind of be in the same realm. I can continue editing this down the line. It's not perfect, but it is a great starting point. And notice, even though I use this as a reference track, you can already hear that the drums are starting to sound slightly different. This is what I mean by that individual artist fingerprint, and this is what I mean why stealing is probably not what you think. And once we've got our drum kit sound, we can begin weaving our song. We can do a bunch of things to change the overall vibe even more. We can adjust the tempo if we want to, which will adjust the tempo of this pattern region automatically, but I'm just gonna leave it as it is for now. I think it's okay. You can already hear enough of a difference that it sounds like kind of its own song, especially if we change up the melody and some of the chord structures will be fine. So much of music production starts with the sound selection itself, and if we copy what others are doing, you're gonna save yourselves years of trial and error. Now, the drums are sounding decent, but now let's move on to the bass line. I'll solo it here in my stems and then just see what it sounds like. It's getting kind of cut off with the AI. Let's hear what it sounds like with the drums. Let's hear what it sounds like with everything else so we can hear. A couple things about this bass. I notice it's very subby, so I'm going to try to make a bass that sounds like that. It's also extremely syncopated. It's not coming a lot of times on the kick, and if it is coming on the kick, it's a little bit side-chained. You can see that the waveforms here are ducking out at the beginning and then getting bigger as it goes on if the kick happens. So we're going to want to do that and copy that same thing. This will let the low end of the kick shine through, but also let our bass be fine as well. It sounds kind of like a realistic bass, so we will use a realistic bass as well. Here's what we got with our kit. I'm gonna add in a kick actually on every single downbeat because I hear that happening in this song as well. We'll go here and bring these down. And we'll slow this down a little bit. Let's add in a new software instrument and we'll make a bass. It's already sounding pretty similar. Maybe crunchy pop. I like crunchy vintage better. And well, let's listen to the actual chords and melody of the bass itself. We'll do something in the similar realm, but we might use some actual different notes just to make it our own. Cool, I came up with a bass line that's sort of in a similar realm. I'm gonna play it on the piano and lock it in. Here we go. We'll adjust the MIDI ever so slightly. We'll quantize it as well, so kind of like there. And as you can hear, we already got something that sounds a little bit different in the realm of things. I just use this as a really good starting point and idea. If you're not sure exactly what chords they're using or you're not sure exactly what sounds good, feel free to copy their idea and then move it up a couple of semitones or adjust the MIDI notes to make it more of your own. All of that is totally fine. I'll solo their bass again to make sure we're on the right track. Seems like they still have a lot more low end, and that's totally fine. I would like to add a synth bass to this to kind of bring out that low end as well. Now I'm going to continue in the same way for the melody and the chords that are happening in the background. So I'm hearing a guitar, I'm hearing some synth sounds. I'll once again try to find a similar sounding thing to that. To get this same effect, I have the kind of the chords outlined like they do here. I'm going to duplicate this MIDI, and I'm going to change this sound so that I can get a more layered type lush sound like I'm hearing in there. I'll go into something like a pad and see if I can find something. Actually, this time I'm going to replay the chords an octave lower just so I can get some more kind of humanation in there. Humanation, is that a word? Here we go. Let's change the sound up. We're going to go into keyboards. We're going to take these synths, we're going to turn them all down a little bit just so we don't clip as much. Another thing I'm hearing is some guitars, so I'll add that in as well. And after messing around, adding some ideas based off of the chords that I have and based off of the original track, I have something that doesn't sound like anyone else's, and it sounds like I said, a mixture of mine and this reference tracks. After adding all these elements, I'll continue mixing it so it sounds great. I'll do a couple things and just make it sound a little bit more professional and a little bit more like the reference track, and we'll go from there. What's great is all along the way, if I ever get lost, I can just actually reference the reference track and go back to the drawing board and see where I'm different, see where I'm the same, and see what I need to change. Here's what we have before the mix. But notice something about the processing itself. I don't have to do a whole lot of processing to get it to sound good because I've used the right sounds based off of the reference track. This is so important. And because we've always used the reference track, we've had a good idea of the correct volume of things, and I've been mixing as I go, trying to match it to the actual reference. Bada bang. And because we know these sounds already work well together, we just don't have to do as much heavy lifting when it comes to processing. Let's take a listen to the final product to see what our song sounds like using this reference track method that I mentioned. And there it is, the one tip you can do that will instantly improve your productions. Use it wisely, young Padawan. If you learned something from this video, hit subscribe for more content just like this. And if you want to watch another video on some of my favorite mixing tricks, you're going to love this video I made on overdrive and distortion.